Today we're off to Indiana to explore an amazing living history museum called Stearns History Museum. All right, gang, let's get this adventure in gear. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the channel. I bring you all the best living history museums, historical reenactments, and I have been here twice now because there is just so much to see here. So if you've never heard of Stearns History Museum, well, then get ready to be amazed because it is truly a special place. And historical places to visit across the United States so you can experience history in person. This cabin was built in 1825 and is one of the oldest buildings on the grounds of Stearns History Museum. And this one is even older, built in 1797. What makes this cabin unique is the fact that it is an example of a double pen cabin. Oh no, this is the kind of general store that you would have seen during the 1820s. And this jail is unlike any jail that I've ever seen. Why, you ask? Well, let me tell you. You'll see period furniture, clothing, and other artifacts that bring the past to life. It is a beautiful place to stroll and explore, and you'll feel like you stepped back in time to the early 1800s. Thank you for joining me on this journey through time. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Your support helps to ensure that we can continue to make these videos for you. Until next time, happy history exploring. You'll also notice the beautiful architecture, which includes hand-carved woodwork, stained glass windows, and marble fireplaces. But it's not just the architecture that's impressive. The history of the house itself is fascinating. Thomas H. Stearns was a wealthy businessman who owned a large farm and was involved in several local businesses. After his death, the house passed to his son Harry, who was a lawyer and served in the Indiana General Assembly. The house remained in the Stearns family until 1958, when it was donated to the Historical Society of Franklin County. This jail dates back to 1848 and was built by Thomas H. Stearns, who donated the land for the museum. But that's not why it's different. No, the reason that this jail stands out is the fact that it was never used to house prisoners. No. See, back in the early 1800s, jails were typically only used to hold people awaiting trial. Once they were found guilty, they were either fined or sentenced to hard labor. Women and children were usually given the option to do hard labor instead of being sent to jail. And men were usually sent to the Indiana State Prison in Michigan City. So this jail was never used to house prisoners because there simply weren't any in Franklin County. But it wasn't just the jail that was interesting. The building that housed the jail was also fascinating. You see, this building was originally the home of Thomas H. Stearns, and it's a great example of an Italianate-style villa. It was built in 1855 and is one of the finest examples of this architectural style in the state of Indiana. It was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1984, and today it serves as the main museum building. They sold just about everything that people needed back then. And it wasn't just a place to buy things. It was also a social hub for the community. People would come in to buy their dry goods, but they would also catch up on the latest news and gossip. I mean, for many people, this would have been their only opportunity to interact with other people on a regular basis. So you can bet that people took full advantage of it. The store was donated to the museum in 1963 by Homer and Opal Stedman, who owned and operated their own general store in town. And it's been a staple of the museum ever since. Double pen literally just means that this cabin is split into two pens or pens. And the reason for this is that early settlers often used one side for their animals and the other side for their family. It just goes to show the lengths they went to in order to survive out on the frontier. The cabin was brought to the museum in 1966 and fully restored by volunteers. And it is open to the public during the spring, summer, and fall. So if you want to experience for yourself what it was like to be a pioneer in the early 1800s, then I highly recommend checking out this cabin. In fact, It's the oldest log structure in the entire county. Now, originally, this cabin belonged to John Brown, who was one of the founders of the town of Brookville. He built the cabin shortly after purchasing the land from the federal government in 1803. The original owner actually lived in this cabin until his death in 1841, which is quite an amazing thought. When you think about the fact that these logs were chopped down by hand and put in place one by Mr. Brown himself, who then lived here for almost 40 years, well, it really puts things in perspective for me anyway. I just love learning about the original owners of this land. It's interesting to me to learn about the lives they lived and the hardships they endured. It just gives me a greater appreciation for the opportunity that I have to visit here today and experience a small portion of their lives vicariously through this museum. And today, we're going to go back in time almost 200 years to the early 1800s. It has 30 historic buildings with more than 200 years of history, and it is an active living history museum, which means when you visit here, you'll likely see historians portraying people from the past come to life right before your eyes. If you've seen any of my other videos, you already know how important blacksmiths were to our nation's history, and seeing one in action really brings a sense of realism to the past. I mean, you can't talk about the American frontier without talking about the importance of blacksmiths. Now, I unfortunately did not catch any of the blacksmith demonstrations during my visits, but I did catch the very end of one. And this is the piece he was working on when I walked up. As you can see, it is a horseshoe. And the thing that I find most interesting about this piece is the fact that the horseshoe isn't completely symmetrical. Now you might be saying, well, duh, it's a horseshoe. Of course, it's not symmetrical. But what I mean is that it's not symmetrical because it was hand-forged. Now, this may seem obvious to some, but I'm a bit of a ditz sometimes when it comes to things like this. I had always thought that horseshoes were made in a mold like a cake pan. So when I saw this and realized that this man actually shaped the metal by hand, I was stunned. I'd never really thought about it before. I just assumed that it would be too much work to do by hand, but clearly it wasn't. So next time you pass by a blacksmith shop, take a closer look at those horseshoes. You might be surprised to learn that each one is truly a work of art. They have over 400 costumed interpreters who come out every weekend, and some even live on site. These interpreters are incredibly dedicated, bringing their love for history to life by wearing period clothing and speaking only in the language and dialect of the time period. They also host special events throughout the year, including Civil War and Revolutionary War encampments, and they even had a Jesse James reenactment here last year. So if you want to know what it was like to live in America during the early 1800s, well then step no. Don't step through this portal. Instead, walk into this field and make your way down this path to where you will encounter your first stop on your journey back in time. In the town of Brookville, Indiana, near the Whitewater River, sits one of the most impressive living history museums that I have ever been to. So Stearns History Museum covers 65 acres with a winding river running right through it. And what better way to start off your journey than at a blacksmith shop? But it's time to move on now. Just beyond the blacksmith shop, tucked away in this little wooded area, sits this wonderful little cabin. Now, while we're on the topic of cabins, just down the road from Mr. Brown's cabin, you'll come across another pioneer-era cabin. Now, as you continue to make your way through the grounds, you will come across the general store. And this general store is no ordinary store. As you wind your way through the shops and houses, you'll eventually come across the jail. As you stroll through the rooms inside the mansion, you'll feel like you've stepped back in time to the mid-1800s. The museum is truly a gem in Indiana, and I hope that you get the chance to visit.